I really enjoy getting to know you guys, and my favorite part of this is not presenting. The presenting does take a long time to get to get accumulated and kind of like compiled to make it actually helpful. But it does take a lot of energy and effort to do that. And what that's been doing over time is put a lot of kind of like weight on my shoulders where it's like Thursday. I'm starting to think about the Friday assemblies, and then that's making me not focus on like building product or growing awareness for Epoch Island. So I still want to do these Friday calls, but I am wanting to explore maybe the format changes a bit. Where in an ideal world, what I would love these Fridays to be, especially when we get the new Epoch Island product up and live, is simply you guys come on and share what you're building on, what you're thinking about building, things that you see being built in crypto that you think are cool, where we're just like chatting about like building things. And I'm not sure about you guys, but me and Steve, who've known each other since 2019, 2017, 2018, I don't know when it was, Steve, like that's me and Steve can just chat about that kind of cool, nerdy stuff all day. And I have a hunch, a lot of people, a lot of you listening here, you guys like that stuff as well. And whenever we get the product live, and people are actually able to promote and get funding for what they're working on, it seems like just a really fun way to engage with you guys. And actually, it's going to be probably much more productive than me just talking in a one-way direction. So I kind of would like to try that today for assembly number whatever we're on, where like I would love to really hear, you know, y'all's stories, what you're building, what you're working on. And of course, we can always be here to ask questions and answer questions about what we're doing with Moai Labs. But hopefully, that resonates at least with some of you. The other thing I'll say is, yeah, last Friday, randomly got sick. Uh, Somebody made the joke that I got sick because I created a Adam Cochran length tweet here that took all of my energy, essentially zapped it out. But still recovering just a little from that, but I am feeling a lot better. So I do think to give us some structure, um, I'm going to speed run as much as I can this thread here. And but what I would like really to be is you guys jumping in, interrupting, raising hands. I really want to get back into the original thing which we did, which was like collaboration, communication, just like really working through this together. So before I do that, would anybody like to add anything to the agenda today? Any topics that you would feel you'd like to get through before we exit today? Why this is so difficult. Steve, do you think there's anything else outside of this tweet thread? I mean, maybe we can start. I think what these meetings would be really good at is where we show like the alpha. Like, I think that's the most value we can give is with heavy disclaimers that it's still a work in progress. Share some things today that we just haven't shared elsewhere, and maybe even getting into like these straight up mirror boards. Just like go through and like really just get into the nitty gritty of like what we're working on, like how we think about building the obstacles, the roadblocks we get into the way. I think I would enjoy doing that. Maybe other people would appreciate that as well. Um,
Yeah, I think let's go through this tweet thread first, and then we can see what questions come from that, and then jump into that mirror board maybe towards the end. Sounds good to me.
okay, cool. Moses, thanks for joining, bud. Appreciate you being here on this Friday evening or afternoon, wherever you're at in the world. So that's what we're going to do today, guys. We're going to read this tweet thread. It's probably going to spark some comments and questions and ideas, and interrupt as needed, take notes as needed, and we could circle back. And then after that, I would love if anybody is willing to. I'd love to hear y'all's crypto stories, what you're building, what you're working on, anything, even if it's not Epoch Island related. I would love to get into that with you guys. So, starting with the tweet thread, this was posted last Thursday. Um, what I basically did is I found the 10 things that Moai Labs has been working on, what we're excited about, and I created a tweet thread for it. And the thing that's probably going to be the most exciting. So we'll start it here at the top. I'm not gonna make you guys wait. Is we feel Moai Labs, we feel we've made a really cool tokenomics discovery. So whether we talk about it that much or not, I think we all agree, everybody on this call, like it is very important for the success of Epoch Island that the Epoch token has like a healthy price, and it has the ability to expand as Epoch Island expands. I know, again, we try not to talk about speculation here. We only like to talk about things we can control, but we can control the model, the business model in which Epoch Island grows, what happens to Epoch. So I'm going to read this very quickly because it's been a week since I've written it and I don't want to miss any things. But basically, up until recently, the Epoch model worked like this. People, including you guys on this call, you would add and lock your liquidity with Epoch. Then you take that liquidity token, you lock it up and you get V Epoch, and you can basically vote on the emissions for Epoch. Um, but the builders would add basically the value that you would get back for doing this is builders would offer you basically points and tokens for voting on them to get funding. Now, the model that this has here isn't that bad, isn't broken by any means, but it's not a very direct value accrual for the Epoch token. And that's one of the hardest when I've been talking to a lot of Epoch elders, that's been one of the hard conversations is like we can generally see how indirectly Epoch the token benefits as Epoch Island grows. But in crypto, more than anywhere, you need a very simple, direct understanding that somebody who learns about Epoch Island for the first time, they can be like, oh, this is how Epoch token succeeds and how it's aligned with the Epoch Island's growth. So in this new model that we're exploring, and Umar has been starting to build already, people lock ETH or USDC or any yield-bearing token into Epoch Island. I'm actually just going to make this big for now. And okay, there we go. So people lock crypto into Epoch Island. That uh, crypto is then put into a yield generator. That's a very broad term for like Lido, Aave, Rocket Pool, anything you can think of, and it starts to generate yield. Then all of the yield is it goes to buy the Epoch token. So this is what's really interesting. And immediately you can see the more ETH and USDC we get locked into Epoch Island, there's continuous buy pressure on Epoch over and basically every single day, new buy pressure. So why would we do that? What's the point of doing that? Well, what it does is it consolidates all of our buy pressure and all of our yield into the Epoch token, which then we as islanders vote where those emissions should go, to which builders, which projects, and which causes should receive these. So when you lock your ETH, you basically get back like a voting power and allows you to vote on where the yield should go. So a real good example would be Maine McFly here wants to create a new Back to the Future movie. He doesn't have the funding to do that, and he doesn't have like the community to do that. So he could come to Epoch Island, and we're going to show some graphics here later. He can make within a few clicks, make a funding portal and say, hey guys, vote for me. I'm trying to do this. I think it's really cool. And if you vote for me, um, you guys are all going to earn McFly points, and everybody with like one McFly point will get to the world premiere of the McFly, the excuse me, of the Back to the Future movie. I'm just making an example off the top of my head here. But so everyone who wants to support that vision and that mission of what Maine McFly is up to can uh, basically lock their ETH, which starts generating yield. The yield on that ETH generates is used to buy Epoch, and then if you vote for Maine McFly and his initiative, then he gets funding for that. So now, of course, Maine McFly may have to sell some of the Epoch or all of it if he needs to fund it, but the math here basically shows that the total Epoch that's purchased from the yield if you subtract the total Epoch that's sold from the builders, we're going to end up with some delta. This might be like 10%, it might be 5%, it might be 20%, but the net of the difference of like how much was purchased versus sold is basically profit in terms of Epoch Island. It's a net positive uh, purchase versus emissions. And while it's not deflationary in the sense of like burning of tokens, it is deflationary in the sense of like the circulating supply is going down because we are buying tokens off the market more than are being emitted, or we can do that. So hopefully this made some sense. While we have this graphic open, would I think I could have articulated that a little better, and it's been a week since I've looked at this specific graphic. Would anybody have any questions or comments on the mechanisms of what's happening here?
I would have one. So to me, like, what's in the simple terms? Let's say if I'm a builder, so we are trying like to say you come to the Epoch Island, you lock your ETH, or this is not necessary, just on the step one.
Yeah, you can we're going to start with ETH likely, but you can lock ETH or USDC here. That's correct.
Okay. So and let's say for the sake of the example, so I put one ETH. Let's say I lock one ETH. What do I get back?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in this example, you would get back, we don't know the name for it yet, but just imagine you get back 10 EI ETH or 10 V ETH, some representation token that is an IOU. It's like a wrapped ETH essentially.
Okay. So and then this goes, let's say, into the pool or for the being like the pool like a yield generator, right? I'm just looking for the flow, like
Yeah.
to like an average Joe. What happens if I come with one ETH, I put it, I lock it. What do I get back? Okay, let's say example of the token that you just mentioned. But this, let's say, what is truly making the buy pressure on the Epoch as a token, as an asset, and like this flow is something that I'm still like scratching my head
Yeah.
a bit.
Yeah. Let's walk through that. And by the way, Houdini, thanks for joining, bud. Appreciate you being here and appreciate the motivation to have this meeting today. Thank you for that. So yeah, it's very simple. So let me ask you, Ninchi, do you use Lido? Do you use Rocket Pool? Where do you generate yield in crypto right now?
None of those that you have mentioned
Mhm.
at the moment, but it like I'm more like on the example side, like just I have one or 10 ETH, it doesn't even matter. So
Mhm.
when I come, I discover Epoch Island. So
Mhm.
what do I do? What do I get back? How do
Yeah,
I propose the solution?
I'm gonna explain that, but I just wanted to try to use a real example for you. So to clarify, you're not generating yield like anywhere in crypto right now, like on Aave or staking anywhere, anything like, I mean, outside of Epoch Island? No?
Staking, yes, but more than that, no.
Okay. So that I can understand then why you have the questions because you might be less familiar with like some of these other protocols and how so what would essentially happen is there's all these projects out there in crypto that generate you yield. So a few of the ones I mentioned off the top of my head, and we can just pull these up in the background here. One of the bigger ones is Lido.fi, and you can essentially come here, you can park your ETH, and it's currently giving you 3.2% yield on your ETH. This is coming directly from like Ethereum's blockchain is for helping secure the network. There's other ways that you can earn yield with your ETH. You can lend it out on like a lending market on Aave, and you can essentially you're your own bank now, and people are paying you fees to borrow your money. But regardless of any of these, the point is when you lock your ETH into Epoch Island, it is locked into one of these yield generating protocols like Lido, like Aave, like Rocket Pool. Um, and it's locked there generating yield. And so if we lock up $100,000 a year, and let's say there's 10% interest, that's $10,000 a year that your ETH um, could be generating. I'm just making up an example. So that $10,000 in our architecture that we're looking at here would be buy pressure on the Epoch token. But as a reminder, it's when you lock it up, you still fully own and control your ETH. Um, you're not losing any penalty or anything on your principal. It's only the yield that your ETH is generating. You are foregoing for the opportunity to participate in Epoch Island and all of the projects that we have coming through our ecosystem. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Though still, I have, let's say, this basic. Thanks for additional explanation. I do understand the base of the staking, but I'm like, because we were game planning 2 3 scenarios like in the past assemblies
Yeah,
regarding also, the pledges. I'm just
yeah.
just like puzzling together the stuff.
Yeah,
So
so you actually just reminded me I need to connect some dots. Again, this is why these calls are so important. Moai Labs is moving so quickly at trying to make decisions and get information and talk to elders that sometimes we're moving so quickly with these things that we forgot to connect some dots. So thank you for this opportunity, Ninchi. It's a really good question. So Ninchi, something along the lines you're like, we've talked about a lot of things in Epoch Island's history. We've talked about passports and pledging and elders and we've talked about a lot of things. Um, However, these past 3 weeks, I wish I could open my calendar and show you guys. I made it my mission to get a call with every single elder I could, both people that you already know about and many that you don't, and like really talk with them and really show them the product that we're looking at building and say, what do you want to see exist? What would you be wanting to lock your capital into? Once I did that, for better or for worse, one of the feedback was, which we can go into later in one of these tweet threads here, was that uh, the pledging and the passport system for now was too complex for many of them to understand. It was like, wait, I need to pledge, and then eventually I get a passport. What is a passport worth? It was a lot of education, and to be honest, it's something I think is very valid, and it's something I think I wish we could have caught a little sooner. So it's not that like the passports and the pledging and all of this is not going to be uh, ever see the light of day. It's simply what is the simplest thing we can build today that our elders and our community members can understand. It takes away all those complexities. So what you're seeing, what we're talking about today is through the discovery of trying to simplify. And another takeaway we had with those elders was that the passports and Epoch is great, but they don't really know how to value it yet. They're like, I might want to buy more Epoch later, but for now, I just want to stay completely exposed to ETH or my stable coins. I don't want to fully commit yet to Epoch Island. So with that, this new ecosystem, this new architecture that we're showing you, the elders and you yourself and me, I'm going to be able to lock up 10 ETH. I'm going to be able to lock up some of my USDC and for now stay completely stable in that. Now, people still can um, get exposure to Epoch, which we can talk about, but it's just not a requirement anymore. Ninchi, does that help connect a few of the dots on for the time being? It might be hard, and it's been hard on me as well to like actually need to wipe the brain of like some of the pledgingness and the passportness for right now.
yeah, sure, helps a lot.
Awesome. Ninchi, those are really good questions to remind me to take a few steps back to this. So this is the architecture. Please do continue to ask questions here. But yeah, just to show you guys a visual. So like somebody could come in here and lock their ETH. This is where the elders, so speaking of elders, we really have been wanting to get them involved and motivated to help grow Epoch Island for quite a while. So how and where do we do that? Well, it's really cool. When you lock your ETH, you can delegate your essential yield and voting power to an Epoch elder to do it for you. So you could click here and then you could choose maybe Cami or one of the other 30 something elders. And you essentially click approve and uh, on this drop down you can see again the other elders and then you stake and now essentially Cami doesn't control your ETH anymore. She never will. But what she controls is your voting rights to then start streaming it to the builders and projects that she wants to support. Now, you can manually still um, vote for the people and projects that you want to support, but it's not you can also delegate it. So why would an Epoch Elder get excited about this? Well, voting and influence to fund projects is a really good perk. But second to that, if you delegate your votes to an elder, they receive a 2.5 to a 10% yield management kind of reward. So again, they don't control your ETH, but they do control your yield. So for doing that, they get upside in like basically streaming like a revenue share with them to stream the yield in really good projects. So hopefully this visual helps a bit. Um, Here's a visual of like after you stake all the projects that you can now go and start voting for and seeing them get funding. So like maybe you believe in Zach, I think it's XBT or something like that. I don't know. But you guys have probably seen the guy on Twitter that does awesome investigative reporting. Or maybe you want to support a hacker house created by Uma, or you want to support Moai Labs ourselves. You can now vote, and what's happening is essentially the yield is streaming to us, and it's helping us keep off the ground with what we're building as Moai Labs and Epoch Island. So lots of graphics I could show you guys, but let me take another pause and look back at the chats. Are there any other comments or questions that I can share about in this tokenomics model? All right, I must have explained it pretty clearly. I guess I can show you guys another visual that was created yesterday. And I'm going to make this one big screen here. So by a show of metaphorical hands here, is anybody familiar with product hunt? I need to change this prototype.
No, I've never heard of it.
Oh, you never heard of product hunt? Okay. So product hunt is an amazing website that was created over a decade ago, and it's very simple. You come to Product Hunt and people post what they're working on. Pretty cool. But the extra difference is you can come in, you could see what they're working on, and then if you like it, you can like upvote it. So maybe if you're familiar with Reddit, it's like Reddit, but specifically for like builders and projects. So this is a cool concept, but it's not really crypto related. There's no tokens or anything, points or anything like that involved. So somebody actually described it to us like this, what we're building here is imagine you see this website, but instead of just random Web 2 kind of startups, you saw Web 3 projects instead and builders of what they're working on. And instead of upvoting with a simple like click, you actually will lock some ETH and then vote for them with your ETH or with your USDC. So what's cool now is they get funding from the yield that you're locking into them. You're streaming your yield to them. Now, why would you do this? Well, let's get back to this Figma board real quick. Here's an example where here's a bunch of projects that you could come in and stake the change you wish to see in the world. So you can come to these projects that you want to support. Again, this can be causes, initiatives, builders, projects. It can be really anything. And you could click on their profile and it'll open up like a personal page for them. And let's see if I can show a visual of that page. Okay, so here's maybe I need to change this one real quick. So if you guys wanted to support Moai Labs, you could come into here. We have a page now, and you could lock in ETH or USDC, and you could choose an elder. You could choose me or anybody else. And then now the funding is going to be going to Moai Labs to help us keep building. And then in return, builders can offer you points, tokens, airdrops, access, utility. It's really up to them. So what's really cool is unlike traditional investing where You know, you go to a project, you give them money, and you hopefully that they do well. This one, you're like, you're kind of aligned with them because you want us to succeed as Moai Labs, and we can give you value in return. And that can be in, again, a million different forms. So hopefully that connects a few dots. Any comments or questions as I'm screen sharing here that I can clarify? Change the prototype real quick. 1 second. Change this back to, there we go. So here's another visual. Sure if it's loading properly for you guys. Just not loading for me. Okay, I guess I'll just use a regular Figma board. So imagine kind of like we're calling a funding feed. You can stake your ETH or USTC to fund builders, projects, and causes. You can unstake at any point in time. This yield generated from your crypto is used to buy Epoch and distribute funding. Well, we haven't finalized this, but here's what you get on these Zoom calls. We've been thinking about a kind of a KPI token. I know a lot of people on the call are familiar with like UMA. But basically think of like a points or a KPI token where you get upside in Epoch Island as you stake. So then you'll see here, it says stake the change you wish to see in the world. And yeah, and you just find the projects and builders that you want to see supported. So I got a little off track of this thread here, but I really wanted to drive home and give you guys an opportunity to ask questions. Would you guys like me to keep going or any more clarifying questions here? Steve, you think there's anything that I missed?
Yeah, you touched on it a little bit, but I just to hammer this in a little more, the slide you were showing a minute ago, that any project, any individual contributor, charities, anything you can think of, could create their own portal that anyone can stake into. So the point system we're talking about is one thing we've been looking at is like the pre-alpha, where there could be projects that are really early, like they're not even quite sure what they're building yet. They're looking for community or feedback, or they're in the early stages. But that's, for a lot of people, that can be exciting because the pre-alpha, you could get earning points for tokens of something that hasn't even started yet. That's where there's a lot of potential for 100x, 1000x type of returns, which you got for your yield. Like your principal was never given away, right? So to me, that can be very exciting.
Yeah, and one thing that I shared with you yesterday, which is cool, because this is permissionless, Steve, in theory, we can create these funding portals for people without them even asking us.
Yes.
So like from day one when we launch this, I expect to see a few, like a few dozen or at least over 10 projects and builders that already have funding portals created, because we can go find people that I like, that I know their ETH address, and I can just create one for them. And now I can start supporting them, and they don't even have to like come to the DApp at all. And then imagine if you're a builder, and you come to Epoch Island, you see your project and it's getting people staking it, you're going to be like, whoa, what's going on here? What's going on? Like, why am I getting funding? So if we can jumpstart that mindset, it's going to be really exciting. Also, I think this page here shows how we are really trying to integrate the elders to be part of this rather than just like side. So what you see here, the elders that will each have their own profile on here, and you can see who are the elders voting for. Do I want to like delegate my votes to this elder? Because they're really good at finding like early alpha projects and builders. And so I think, Steve, what you kind of touched on here to really drive the point home. The later you get into a project, the less upside you have. I think that's a pretty general statement that's somewhat accurate. Most people would agree with that. As projects hit product market fit and as they scale, and as everybody on crypto Twitter is already talking about them, it's a little the train has already left the station, if you will. And then the earlier you get into projects, like I would consider Epoch Island early, the more upside you have. Now it's also more unknowns, but you have way more upside. That's the trade-off, is upside versus like uncertainty. We believe there's basically um, a chapter before even where Epoch Island is right now, where builders are thinking about ideas and like exploring like what they want to do next. And if they just had enough funding to kind of like quit their day jobs, quit their 9 to 5 and focus on like building a crypto project, it could unlock them to build something. And they don't always know if they need a token or want a token or if it's going to have equity. But they can start to build an early community and get that early bit of funding through Epoch Island. And what our thesis is basically is if we can get those builders early, if we can be the first touch point where builders get their first community members and funding, that hopefully we build some loyalty where eventually they do raise a $2 million seed round through Epoch Island, simply through kind of yield rewards. So hopefully these are connecting some dots. You guys are a little quieter than normal, but hopefully some of this is resonating with the scale of what this can reach if we hit it right. I guess what we haven't really shown here, Steve, that we could go into now is like, what does it actually look like if you're a project or a builder? Um, well, while we're on this, is there anybody here on the call here that's building something? I would love to actually use a real example with a real person on this call, and show you how this would work for you. Is anybody here willing to? And again, it doesn't have to mean you're building some mega startup. It can be just like a side hobby, side project that you are working on, tinkering on.
Yeah, Zach, I can volunteer myself with
Okay.
the Realms project.
Yeah, let's do realms, right? So you would come in here and choose like person, project, or cause. I'm assuming this is like project, or realms is, am I right to say that it's from B Labs? That's like the
Yeah, it's kind
builders.
of flying under the B Labs banner. Yep.
Okay, but let's just use realms because like let's do this. So is it just called realms? Anything
Yep,
else
that's
with
it.
it? Okay.
That's it.
It's a fun word, by the way. I think I'm surprised I don't see realms more in crypto. Maybe it's out there, but it's a cool word. So you can
It's
enter
definitely
the.
out there in crypto.
Oh, it
But
is.
we're
Maybe I'm
we're
not in
using it
those.
anyway.
You're like, screw that. I'm going to use this word better than you
Yeah.
guys can. I love it. So you could come in and then B Labs. I'm just going to make a blabs.eth. You guys could come in and put in your ETH address on base. Then you would click next and you could come in here. And then what this is essentially, this funding feed is, you could either do this through the Realms, if you have a Realms Twitter or a B Labs Twitter, and you could come in here and put a link to, let's say B Labs, I don't know, 123, and this is where you are, sorry, keeping people up to date with the project, what's going on, and more importantly, if people vote for you to build Realms, what are they getting in return? So it can either be, we're not going to offer you anything, just you just want to support builders. Like I am actually in a position right now, it's not a lot of money, but I would love to lock a small amount of ETH to support you guys just because I think you're doing is cool and I can see that you're ambitious. Like even if you guys don't offer anything, but if you did want to offer points or tokens or something, so like what could the points be for? Like I know people think points are like polarizing, but like you could say, you get these points, and then if we ever have like a token associated with this, 10% of all of our tokens will be given to the points holders. Like that's just an example. And I'll be like, oh, this is awesome. I'd love to see you guys get to that point of having a token. Or even if there's no token, if you have this amount of points, you guys get the first pilot projects to be able to use it, like Epoch Island. You can see I'm just brainstorming here, but there's tons of stuff. As I go through that, what do you think Realms could offer, if anything, to people who vote for them or vote for you guys?
Yeah, you mean in real life?
Yeah, yeah. Let's go. Let's use a
Yeah, I
real
mean it's a
example.
service. It's a service that we eventually plan to monetize. So we can basically give people access to
Yeah, or like credits
free,
or something, right?
yeah, credits, basically. Yeah.
There you go. And so like now, if you believe in this project and you want to get a year's worth of free service, whatever package that is, and it's going to be, eventually it's going to be a $99 thing. You get it for a year. So this is a $1,200 value. I'm just making it up. Then you could say, if you vote for us and if you get 10 points, if you vote for us, you'll get early access. You get what I'm saying? Like it's really up to you to dictate that.
Yeah, if it sounds like a Kickstarter thing. Isn't this kind of
Yeah.
like what Kickstarter does?
Kickstarter is a great example. It's a really good example. The differences here are in Kickstarter. I actually haven't participated in Kickstarter in a while, but I think they have some threshold that do you have to hit a threshold in Kickstarter to get the funding released or something like that? I don't know. I don't know if that's a thing. But in Kickstarter, you're giving up money and then it's gone. In this, when people are voting for you, they're locking up their money. So they're not actually losing any money. They're just losing the opportunity cost of their yield. So that's a big thing. And then in Kickstarter, yeah, you get a product. In this one, you can offer digital on-chain things as well. But that's a really good analogy for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like you are yield farming
Yeah.
these specialized things, properties, or whatever.
You're yield
Rather
farming the
than
future of builders, whatever that is. Like that's
yeah, yeah,
essentially what
that's
it
cool.
is. Yeah. Yield farm the future. That's the next hashtag here. And
Yeah.
that's kind of why we came up with like stake the change you wish to see in the world. So you can staking the things, the world is changing, vote for it with your money and be part of the upside if they succeed. Like that's really the end goal here. Yeah. So just to complete this, and then we can evaluate this, you could put in a start and end date for your funding portal. So like you guys can vote from May 5th to July 5th, and then you guys could call your points realm points or whatever it is. You don't have to give any value to these points if you don't want to. But by default, we're thinking about offering these points. And then you would be able to see all the information. You can click confirm, and then boom, now realms is has a thing here, and you guys may or may not care about the funding. Like we're from day one, we're not going to be able to generate you guys hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like we just don't have the network of that yet. Maybe in a year or two we can. But what I think is more important now is like getting signal that what you're working on is important and people think it's cool. And now people can discover you. Like you guys aren't on CoinGecko, but a lot of people get on CoinGecko just for the discovery mechanism of CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap, right? So we want to get to a point where people can find out about you guys, and maybe this brings on some new customers or new users or new projects. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's
Yeah,
it. Yeah. Thanks for letting me use you as a guinea pig. Anything you'd like to ask or share?
yeah. Thanks for doing this concrete example. I think it's becoming more clear in my mind. So how do we like give people the realms points then, like on the sort of back end once this is set up?
So excuse me, Epoch Island takes care of all that. You don't have to worry about that. Um, so
Is there like a strategy or is it yeah, how does that happen?
So we are still working on the point distribution process, but how this would work, we're thinking about, Steve, this is what I'd love for your thoughts. We've been thinking about like every points from every project that like let's just assume that there's a standard 100 points a day. Okay. We wanted to try to standardize points in some type of way. So if you did it from May to July here, May, June, July, what is that? 60 days. So you would have like 60 times 100, 6,000 points or whatever of points that are distributed. And I think actually I realize where your question is the root of it. Maybe people get the points relative to how much voting power they are locking into you. So if I have 10 ETH and I want to vote for you, and Steve has 20 ETH, he wants to vote for you. If we both locked from beginning to end, he would end up with twice the amount of points that I do. Does that help?
Uh, Sorry, could you repeat the last sentence?
So if you started this on May and I started into July, and there's just for simplicity, ignore everything else. Let's say there's going to be 10,000 points that are 10,000 realm points that are generated. Okay. And if it's only me and Steve that are competing over your points, we're the only two people that are like we lock in our ETH because we want to like support you. We want to fund you. We want to vote for you. The yield from our ETH is going to be getting to your hands. But in return, me and Steve are going to be basically earning your points relative to how much capital we have locked up. So if Steve locks up twice as much ETH as I do, he's going to end up with like 6,666 points, and I'm going to end up with 3,333 realm points.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So basically, it's up for us to then determine based on this fixed sort of pro rata distribution of some fixed number of coins that have a limited, lifespan or life cycle. Then we determine how we want to distribute out whatever the goodies are that we're offering the people,
Yeah.
right?
And you could offer nothing. Again, if you want to say your points are not valuable at all, you can say that. But you could say, here's like a few examples. You could say the top 5 point holders will get free access for a year, or you could say you need 300 points to get free access to our service for a year. Like you could say whatever it is that you want.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. And to connect one last dot, sorry, but because I'm pretty sure you're familiar with UMA, right? Like if you are the person
Yep.
I'm visualizing. So how this works is when you make a funding proposal, a funding feed, your promise of what you like what gives points value and what you're going to do and what you're going to build and why people should vote for you is facilitated through the UMA's optimistic oracle. So what that means is if you say, hey, everybody vote for me and we're going to do this, and then you don't do that, the UMA's optimistic oracle can dispute that you didn't do what you were supposed to do and make sure that you don't get the funding that you should. So there's like this nice third party dispute resolution system to make sure people don't get screwed over. Does that make sense?
Interesting. So yeah, does that mean that the funding comes in at the end of the funding period?
Good question. So it comes in block per block, but you have to claim it. So it'll start showing block per block, but then you will have to click like a withdraw button.
I see. And then at that point,
That's
that
when
gets
that's when somebody could dispute you if they wanted
yeah,
to. Yeah.
interesting.
I actually just realized because you're so familiar with UMA, I'd love to show you what we are presenting with UMA. We created a DApp walkthrough with them. So you see here, somebody could select UMA. Say they want to lock 100 UMA and they search for like a delegate and all right, I'm going to choose Moai Labs and then you approve it and then you stake it. You see all these projects that I can support. I could come into here, I can find the project that I want to support. I want to support the UMA Hacker House. So then I see this and then if I want to vote for this, I could come into here and like I want to vote with my UMA now because I have it staked. And then I can like essentially now I'm helping this UMA Hacker House come into existence. And UMA Hacker House could say, all right, for everybody who has 5 Hacker House points, you get to come into the co-working space for free every Tuesday. I'm just making it up. Then if you as a project wants to, we just went through this with we just went through this with you. You come in here, you create this, you click confirm, and then like your funding portal is created. So I just wanted to show you an example of using this. You could lock UMA in theory, if that helps a little.
I'm a little bit confused on that. Yeah, the first part that you went through, like that is to just be able to get listed. Is that right? And sort of signal a certain project compared to everyone else?
Are you talking about this part here or another
Yeah,
part?
where you selected the elder and you staked your tokens.
Yeah. So I see where the confusion is. So it's a two-place marketplace. There's builders and projects like yourself, like Realms. And then there's people who want to support the builders and projects. These are the stakers. So stakers on one side, builders and projects on the other side. What you're looking at here are stakers who are locking their UMA. These are the people who are giving up the rights to the yield that the UMA is generating. They're giving up the rights to the UMA so that they can get points and upside in projects like Realms or whatever it is. And then on the other side, of the marketplace is the projects. The projects goes through this like a form, a listing. It's completely permissionless. You don't need anybody to give you the rights to do this, and you can create this. You would do this if you want to get a stream of funding coming your way to
I
fund what
see.
you're doing. And where the stream of funding is coming from is the UMA that the stakers lock up. The yield it generates is going to you.
Yeah. Okay. I think I get it. So the first part is about creating the so the first part is about registering to be a investor, kind of.
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah, we don't like to use the word investor because not just the legal implications, but some people are doing this not to invest and they really want to just do. But let's just for simplicity, we could use the I word here and say,
I
yeah,
see.
there's investors and then projects. It's like, and backers, you could say backers and then projects. Yeah,
Okay, backers, yeah. And so what is the relationship with a backer and an elder?
great question. So as a backer, I can either, if I like, I know I want to support Realms, I don't need to go through an elder. But if I don't quite know exactly what I want to support just yet, and I trust the judgment of an elder to find projects better than I can, and maybe I don't have the time to do that, I can delegate my voting rights, my yield to the elder, and I am essentially
Mm,
following their voting power, their voting. So if I delegate to Cami Russo, and then Cami Russo goes and votes for Realms, she votes for Moai Labs, and she votes for the Uma Hacker House. I am now she is now basically has the rights to my influence been given to her. And in
mhm.
return, Cami receives 2.5 to 10% of all the yield that your UMA generated.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty lucrative. Yeah.
Is there a requirement for elders to be participating? Like to have like a minimum amount, I guess, is staked in projects, or how's that um managed, or what's the strategy there?
Um, there is not currently a minimum requirement for the elders. However, if I were an elder, how do I get people to delegate to me? I'd probably want to have my own skin in the game so that people, trust me because like I have my money in this too. So while there's not a technical requirement, this kind of like a indirect expectation in my view that they will lock up some amount of ETH or USDC. So just as a real example, when I talk with the elders, one of them I talked to is Seb, who is the founder of Zapper, and I was poking like, what kind of initiatives or projects would you like to support? He's like, well, one thing I'm really passionate about is like digital art, and you guys might have seen like generative NFTs and stuff like that. He's like, I'm really passionate about that, and I wish there was more like artists doing that. And so what Seb could do is say, hey, everybody, delegate your votes to me, and I'm gonna go find those artists in the world. I'm gonna like vote for them. I'm gonna fund them, and I'm like, so today I'm locking 10 ETH. Please join me. So hopefully that answers your question. There's not a technical requirement, but there's definitely an economic reason to stake into your own funding kind of voting power, if you will.
Yeah, as a backer, sort of entering in the system, it seems like I'd want to sort elders by how much they've staked themselves to see like who's got the most skin in the game. Because that would
Um,
indicate that they're
yeah,
is that right? Or
you could do that, but again, I think another example would be so all of our elders are going to have a hyperlink to share. So like epochisland.io/Fernando. And then once you go to Fernando's link, he's basically going to be like pre-selected here. And um, when he's pre-selected now, it's automatically, you don't have to like do the drop down or anything. But the reason I'm like not entirely sure if it's always going to be just about which elders have the most staked capital is because I probably want to follow an elder that I align with on their quote unquote investing philosophy. So like um Fernando might really care about AMMs and liquidity because he built Balancer. But I might want to vote for somebody who's really into network states and wants to fund network state projects. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it doesn't always have to be the amount of capital that they have. And just as a reminder, the worst case scenario is I lose my yield, which is not the worst case
Right.
in the world, you know? So it's not like they're stealing or running away with my money or misusing my principal. They're only using my yield. So that's how I would slightly look at it different. But I love your general idea here is we should have an elder thing that's like elders can move their way up by like locking more capital. It has an active voting history of what they voted on in the past. It has like when's the last time they did a vote? Like, you know, are they still doing this?
Mhm.
Like stuff like that. Just like a transparent elder board of activity would be awesome.
Yeah, because even if you do sort of align, let's say they all have like a bio, and you can go read them and find the ones you like the most. Doesn't necessarily mean they're active or they're,
Agreed.
thinking deeply about things, or they even want to risk their own capital in this, or lock up their own capital for a
Agreed.
long time.
And as a reminder, you can still self-delegate to yourself. Like you could still take into your own hands if you would like to.
Sorry if I missed this, but the yield that's being generated, is that Epoch?
So this is where we get really excited about the economics here. So the yield is being generated from not Epoch. It's being generated from like ETH, USDC, any tokens that are generating yield. Like in UMA, it's like voting rewards is yield, right? But all
Yeah,
of the yield that's generated, we use it to buy Epoch off the
I
market.
see.
Then that consolidates everything into Epoch, which is then we vote to distribute to builders. So you guys are getting into the alpha stuff, but let me show you guys a sheet actually. Steve, you think we can show this? This is actually really
Big disclaimer: this is work in progress, and nothing's being promised.
yeah. What sheet is it? Is this the right sheet? I think this might actually be the right sheet.
That's
So
what. Yeah.
I just want to show you guys, depending on how much like ETH we get locked up, like there's over 33 million ETH that's locked up right now in staking. So like, is it that crazy that like 1 million of this eventually comes to Epoch Island to like support builders, get upside? Like, this is the bull case. So we have everything from like the bear case to like the bull case here. And then, of course, the price is different today than it was. I actually don't know what the price of ETH is today, but like you can put in whatever price of ETH you want here.
Mhm.
Then this shows like how much value is locked. Then you can change the staking rate, and it shows the yearly funding and then the monthly funding. So, this might not seem like a lot at first, but you can see here how pretty quickly we basically are starting to emit millions of dollars. And this is only ETH. This is not even USDC, which has 4 times the interest rate. Like if you change this from ETH to USDC, the yield 4x is here. But basically, this yield is all buy pressure on Epoch token, month over month, year over year, block over block, essentially, that gets distributed to funders. So hopefully, these graphics, there's a few of these graphics here that need to be worked on. But yeah, this shows. Does that answer your question about like the yield distribution?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Real quickly, may I ask a question?
Please do. Who's talking, by the way?
This is Moses.
Okay. Hey, buddy. Good to see you. I haven't heard from you in a while. Hope you're doing all right.
I know. Yeah, everything's good. Yeah, just lot going on all around everybody. Sure.
Agreed.
So one thing I'm kind of, I think, confused on or getting stuck on is
Sure.
we keep hearing the yield generated from locked up ETH or USDC, what have you, goes to the builders, but then also it goes to buying Epoch. Okay, so what's going on there?
Really good question. The reason that I have shared those two things separately is at one point in time, the ETH was going to go directly to the builders, and there was going to be no buy pressure on Epoch. Then about a week and a half ago, I think, Steve, that's roughly the timeline, we started to run through what would be the implications if instead of going directly to the builder, it first was consolidated into Epoch, essentially buying Epoch. And we have a long Slack thread. Maybe, Steve, we can share all of those pros and cons. We thought about this deeply, and there are some trade-offs to it, which I can share. But the pros of consolidating everything into Epoch became clear from getting people interested in the Epoch token is very helpful, to consolidating all the yield instead of it being into a million different things, to having the higher the price of Epoch is, the more we can actually fund projects, which is great. It kind of goes up. So Moses, to answer your question shortly, as I should have done first, the answer that we are most leaning into right now and building towards is the ETH yield does not go, it does go to builders, but it is first used to buy Epoch. So what the builder is actually receiving in the early days is the Epoch token. Now, this is where this tweet kind of comes in. Many of the builders might end up selling the Epoch. So let's just assume 80% of the builders sell all of their Epoch that they get from building. That's sell pressure. However, it's still 20% more buy pressure than sell pressure. So we will come out like net positive from that. So Moses, does that help answer at all?
Yes. Yeah. So then the one thing that comes to mind is the current balancer pool, the 80-20 thing. I know that there's, a lot of discussion and consideration around maintaining that or doing something different. So I obviously, I guess that's a consideration too.
It's a huge consideration, something that me and Steve actually spent, what was that, an hour or two yesterday trying to figure out
Yeah.
where is the best place to park our liquidity. And just to run through, I think there's 5 options I can leave you guys with. Excuse me. We can either use Balancer on base. We can, the problem with that is Balancer takes a 50% trading fee, protocol fee. We can fork Balancer and remove the trading fee. Surprisingly, this was suggested to us from the Balancer team itself, which is crazy, but that's a whole nother conversation. We can create a Uniswap V2 pool, which would just be a 50-50 pool. We can create a Uniswap V3 pool and allow people to kind of choose their own prices and all of that. We can try to wait for Uniswap V4, but that's going to be quite a while. Or we can try to create our own kind of bonding curve of liquidity, which will take a lot of development time and resources, which we don't really want to do. So there's all these options for the where do we park our liquidity to facilitate all of this. Me and Steve have like some intuition on here, but it's not yet finalized. Moses, do you have any suggestions or comments or questions about that aspect of all of this?
Not immediately. I'll have to kind of think about it and digest it a little bit. It's not really necessarily my wheelhouse either, but if there's something that comes up, yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
I love it. Moses, thanks for the
Yeah,
question.
I think it's really important that we find some type of L2, let's say specifically base solution in the near future. But as far as custom development that say a forked balancer may require, or a custom bonding curve or things like that, that's development time not being spent on this yield system that we've been spending most of this call talking about. So we're trying to prioritize certain things right now.
Yeah. So by the way, Ninchi, I want to get to you right now. I will just say, Houdini, I copy and pasted your comment here from the Zoom to my personal notes so that I don't miss it. And I think we can get to this on this call, but if we don't, I will try to respond to that on Discord as well, because there were a few things here that I think we talked about, and then a few things we haven't. But since Ninchi had his hand up, go ahead, Ninchi.
Yeah, okay. I will again take my chances on, let's say, a bit lack of the full picture. So, to my mind, and please correct me on the way, like if I have 10 ETH, I'm coming into the Epoch Island game like twofold. One fold is governance with all the, let's say, yield that I'm going to receive in sense of votes, points, name it however you want. And the second fold is, let's say, API, like that sheet that you were just previously showing, like with the example of 3.5% yield. So my question is, who is providing this staking rate? Where is it coming from? The first question. So I parked my 10 ETH and I saw, oh, okay, I'm going, beside everything else, I'm going to receive back my staking rate like with 3.5%. So who is providing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, how Ethereum works is there are emissions of ETH tokens that go out every single block to people who validate the network. So, if you've heard of node operators, but basically they are helping secure and make sure that transactions are processed properly. In return for doing that service, these node operators, these stakers, earn 3.5%. Currently, it's 3.5% rewards. So that's how Ethereum works at its core. So what we are doing with the ETH is participating in that staking in the native Ethereum blockchain to get these kind of mining rewards. So this used to be proof of work, Ninchi. So like in Bitcoin, you turn on your laptop, you
Okay.
literally.
So maybe the missing puzzle was just this. So when the my 10 ETH comes to the Epoch Island will take it and park it in this particular pool, like to secure this 3.5% of the staking rate that is coming. This is maybe something that I was missing, like
Yeah,
in the picture.
yeah, that's accurate. I will just add a small disclaimer.
Ah.
We're not doing it directly. We're going to be using products that help you facilitate this. So this is why Lido exists. This is why Rocket Pool exists. Because if you try to do this natively yourself, I think that there's still a 32 minimum ETH requirement. So basically, there's products like Rocket Pool that have made this easier to use. But yes, you're exactly right. It's essentially being pooled to secure the Ethereum network.
Okay, so and then on behalf of me, myself, let's say all this generated ETH from these pools before it lands in my, let's say, wallet on or dashboard or however, it gets converted to the Epoch token. So I will never see, let's say, generated yield anything else than, let's say, Epoch tokens as such. Am I right?
Yes, that is correct. You are completely giving up your rights to yield. And in return, you are getting the ability to vote on projects and builders to support them. And in return, you believe that that will be more beneficial for you in the long run. So, yes, that is accurate.
Okay. So let's say the main driver for the Epoch token, let's say appreciation would be this, let's say, from the example 3.5 staking rate that is going to keep pushing, let's say, the Epoch token and utility and the price if you want it. So
Yeah, this is going to be where we can now directly point to demand for the Epoch token, which has been historically very hard to do indirectly because it's like, well, there's passports and there's pledging and there's liquid, like it's been very complicated. Now it's very straightforward. We can literally come to a calculator like this and show if we get this amount of ETH locked and this amount of USDC locked, and these are the interest rates, here's how much we will be having $27 million of buy pressure per year on the Epoch token. $500,000 per week on the Epoch token. Again, these are not predictions, but these are just like numbers of what would happen if we hit scale with Epoch Island. Yeah.
cool. So just one last, I hope. So all this, let's say, purchased Epoch from, let's say, from the yield, it's in the hands of Epoch Treasury, and this is, let's say, the place from where we are going to found, let's say, the builders, the projects, the stuff. So it's
That's
never comes back to Nenchi's hands, because Nenchi decided to, like it is agreement, like to give up on this any yield. But I do get the, let's say, voting governance rights, like to decide. But everything that it is generated, it goes to the treasury, right?
that is mostly accurate for like the important points. The Ninchi, where it's really fun and where we had a nice debate this week. So yes, Ninchi, I'm just going to say yes, that is majority fully accurate. The interesting and fun nuance here is, let's say 1 month we generate $1 million a yield. And then let's say we use it to all buy Epoch. Great. And let's say Epoch goes up to it's now worth $1.2 million. So we essentially like profited $200,000, right? Because we generated $1 million and the Epoch token is now worth 1.2 million. Is there a reality where we as Epoch Islanders maybe want to distribute some Epoch of that extra surplus back to V Epoch holders? I totally believe so. Like if we find ourselves in a situation where we are generating more revenue, or like the Epoch is more valuable than the revenue that we're generating, we're in a surplus, if you will. The Epoch holders at any point in time, not just what I want, but like what technically can happen is can vote to distribute Epoch rewards to V Epoch holders, because we're doing good. So my point is, everything you said, yes, and the Islanders can still vote to reward themselves with the success of the project separately to everything you just said, because we're doing well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for now it does. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm glad we got through that. Any other comments or questions before we keep going here?
Yeah. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a brief one. Away from tokenomics at the moment. If I look at projects, I'd like to know, get some more information about them. What information would I get? And yeah, what would one have to provide also as a project? So what's the information flow?
Great question. So the short answer is the project can provide as little or as much information as they would like. Of course, being if you don't provide a lot of information, people are probably not going to vote for you. Like, it's like if you go to product hunt here and I didn't provide any information about what I'm doing or what I'm up to, it's not going to go very well. You're not going to get a lot of upvotes. To start, we are going to kind of use for our MVP all of the information that you find out about a project. We are to start, not in the long run. We're going to try to push that to like Twitter so that you keep all of the let me show you real quick with an actual graphic. You see how this has like this funding feed and has this little icon here? Like, we're going to try to start by just pushing where all of the information you want to find out is on the funding feed directly. But in the long run, we want to take all of that and bring it in-house, if you will. So you never have to even leave Epoch Island's website. And sorry, I'm trying to get back to this. And that it'll look more like this, where you can like just look through, and then you see how this person here. So this is Josh Payne. He basically wrote an update. This is the creator of this living images, and then people can like ask questions in here. Check out all of the people that are like voting for them. Like, all of this is not an MVP, but that's the future of what we want to do. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, no, thanks.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Somebody was trying to jump in. David, was it you?
Yeah. It's cool that you kind of built this mechanism that um basically allows you to earn yield on any token and then sort of like feed it back into Epoch. Um, But then it kind of begs the question here is like, if, you were wanting to stake UMA or some other token, who's coming up with that strategy for earning yield on that token? Or because it sounds a little bit like a yearn or something where you have this like basket of strategies. But that seems a little bit not scalable. So maybe you have some thoughts around this.
I love that question. I can tell it's all connecting. If you've gotten to the point of that question, all the other things are starting to see the full picture here. So in short, Moai Labs is leading that effort right now. And Umar and specifically. So the benefit that we have as Moai Labs in doing this is we've done it in the past. We actually created a protocol that does basically this, that reached $5 million of TVO with Flash Stake. So how Flash Stake worked was you lock your principal, you get your instant upfront yield. You get your yield up front. So we had to learn during that process how to separate yield and principal. And so these strategies that you talked about, we've essentially already done it. We've created one for Rocket Pool before. We've done it for Lido. We've done it for Aave, which are all the major one. Wait, did we do it for Lido? I don't know. STETH is a little trickier. I can't remember. But basically, Moai Labs is going to lead this to start. And while we do hope to maybe create like a ecosystem in the future where builders are incentivized to create their own strategies for any protocol, any project, right? I didn't mention UMA, but like UMA is another one that would be kind of tricky. Like we actually spent a few days trying to figure out how would this work with UMA, because UMA is hard because it's not just you get yield, but you have to actively vote and you can get slashed and like there's all these complexities, right? And then we also learned with UMA, you can only delegate your voting to one wallet address. Like there's lots of complexities that come up when you try to build these things. In the future, it'd be great if the person who builds them got to get a cut of something, like I think that's what Yearn did. But regardless, we're going to own it at the beginning. But the good thing is probably 80% of the yield that people would want to use is going to come from ETH staking and maybe lending markets. Like there's all these like extraterrestrial kind of yield sources, but they're not huge players. So probably only 3 to 4 strategies is what's going to need to get like 80% of the yield options. Does that help?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And that's cool that you guys already have a background in this, so that really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Were you familiar with Flash Stake? I don't know.
No, never heard of it.
So this is what we worked on before. So basically, yeah, you could come in here, lock in ETH, and then get paid the yield instantly and upfront. But that's
Oh
another
wow, that's a great
conversation.
idea.
It's
Is it still running?
it's still operational. We could have a whole breakout call about what we've learned from that. Because kind of like our response, just like you just had, is like this is a really good idea. And it is still a good idea. The thing that we kind of learned is instant upfront yield is great, but it's kind of like being the opposite of degen. Like degens love variable high APYs that are all over the place, and when you get instant upfront yield, you're kind of locking in a fixed rate yield, and you are locking in your ETH, so you're like less liquid. And if there's anything we've learned is like people love to stay liquid and they love like degenning into random stuff. So there's definitely a marketplace for this. Actually, not too far off of this idea is essentially Pendle. Pendle essentially separated yield from principal. They didn't focus on getting the yield instantly and up front. And we've all seen the success of Pendle. So there is a reality in which Flash Stake, which we hope to actually, which is really cool about Epoch Island, if we get Epoch Island up and running and people think Flash Stake still has some secret magical power left in it that we can rejuvenate it essentially, we can vote for it and it can start getting the resources it needs to start competing again. But long story short, yeah, it learned a whole lot during their Flash Stake times as well. Any more questions for you, David? If not, I'm going to go to some of these comments here.
All good, thank you.
Okay, cool. Steve, I see you responding to some of Houdini's questions. I see Coleman says the main thing about question 5 is what's in it for people trying to grow their net worths and don't have startups. Let me read this question out loud. Do you think this product will find traction from normal crypto investors users that would make them feel like they want to buy its token? It's a no-brainer for builders, but not sure whether it will be appealing to normal DeFi users. Normal DeFi users. Jay Coleman, if you or Houdini, if you guys would like to expand on this, because my gut tells me there's kind of a disconnect between like understanding this is a marketplace. So the marketplace is for people who want upside and to support builders and projects. And then there's the builders themselves that need the funding. It sounds like you guys understand that you guys clearly see the why builders would need funding. Is the question here that we don't quite see clearly how people will get upside here? Or is the question here how non-builders can get funding through here? That's how I'm trying to analyze this question. I guess I could answer both of those, but I wanted to see if we can get any clarity here. Steve, how are you interpreting these questions?
I'm needing some clarity too. Yeah,
Okay.
I think you're disconnect.
Okay, so just to answer the second one, it's not just builders that can get upside in this. Like, I want to give us like some more kind of weird examples, but like not too crazy. So, let's say you have there's somebody in a third world country who's like trying to get enough money to go to college or university. Right now they could create a GoFundMe page, which is great. I do see a reality where non-builders, just because people want to see that person succeed, it would take like one person staking a decent amount of like a small amount of ETH, a small amount for a whale to fund that person. And that person can still stay exposed to their ETH without like selling it. And a lot of things in crypto is about like, I don't want to sell my ETH, but I like want to do things. So this is a way for non-builders to still be able to use Epoch Island. Another example would be, this is a whole nother crazy idea, but I still think it has legs. So let's say a person like, they don't really have an idea that they want to build, but they're like, hey, if you vote for me, I'm going to put 2% of my entire net worth that I earn over my next 10 years. I'm going to return back to the people who voted for me. This is kind of a crazy idea, but you can see that this person it's not building anything. Maybe they're just working for Facebook or they're working for Google, or they want to go on I don't know, they want to start trading, whatever it is. How that person can actually get the funding to get off the ground to pursue that vision or that dream of theirs. So yeah, I don't think that this is just for builders. It can be for initiatives, causes, anything you want to see exists in the world that isn't getting enough funding. So that's how I would answer that second part there. In terms of like, how do DeFi users get upside in here? Well, let's think about this. Currently with your ETH, you get 3.5% APY in your ETH. I'm not sure about you guys. That doesn't really excite me that much. It's nice, great, but it doesn't really excite me. Would I rather get guaranteed 3.5% APY on my ETH, or would I rather have like a 1 in 10 chance that one of the builders or projects that I support in the early stage goes on and becomes the next Uniswap or the next Aave or the next whatever, Coinbase? So I really love the idea of like finding the next Hayden Adams or finding the next Brian Armstrong or Vitalik and like giving them the opportunity to pursue what they're interested in and being part of that journey with them. That excites me as much more than 3.5% APY. Another thing to keep in mind is we are looking to build a way where you don't have to give up all of your yield. So if you're generating 15% APY on your stable coins, by the way, I should probably take it off this flash website here. If you don't want to give up all of your 15% APY on your stable coins, you could say, okay, I want half of this to go to like a builder or a project that I support. So it's not an all or nothing thing. So Steve, maybe those statements I just made helped or not. I don't know, but that's how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I think about it too, where I'd want to vote for several projects, and I'd expect that one of them is pretty likely to, you're at the mercy of your own intelligence of being able to vet certain projects, where some of them might be more interesting to you than others.
Yeah.
I see a lot of potential in this.
So Steve, to Houdini's last question here, like I don't want to speak on us on what other people's may or may not speculate. But what I will say, Houdini, that me and Steve and Umar believe is like the the Epoch purchased by pressure from yield is it's the baseline of buy pressure. It's not the ceiling of buy pressure. I would be very, very surprised if people didn't see this model and see a consistent flow of buy pressure, and then other people who, not with yield, but with their actual principal, want to get their hands on Epoch, want to enter the ecosystem, wouldn't want to, buy Epoch. Again, I can't share what other people are going to do. I know as myself, if I saw this business model, I would want to ride the wave with those people without having to like stake ETH. I just want to buy Epoch. It's going to be a much faster path to do that. So, yeah.
When I hear token buyback, it sounds very bullish. So yeah, definitely agree with that sentiment.
There you go. You said it a lot more succinctly than I did, but yeah. And then also, just so you guys know, I think a lot of you on this call are V Epoch holders. Every single time somebody buys Epoch, and then even if the builders sell it, there's some trading fees going to V Epoch holders, which is very consistent. Imagine if we're continuously funding builders back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's a lot of nice yield for the V Epoch holders. All right, Houdini says, I'm going to read this one last Houdini comment, and then I'm going to try to get through the rest of this thread that I didn't get to. By the way, this Houdini, I just want to give you another shout out. I wasn't entirely sure if today would be a fruitful assembly based off of like the responses, but I think these are the types of conversations I want to have in the future. And thank you for pushing for this meeting to happen. So the question is whether this product will get traction from investors, people who are not interested in using the product. My current normal users won't see appealing DApp and hence won't be interested in just buying. So I guess Houdini, me and David just touched on, I have different opinions of that, just to again show a real product that's generating real revenue is bullish in my brain. So if you were to see this business model and not get bullish, maybe some people won't view it that way.
I feel like clarifying one point in case things to be said. So let's say all the yield generated this week was used to buy 100 Epoch tokens, was the value at that time. And those 100 Epoch tokens are the only Epoch tokens being sent to all the builders. Worst case scenario, they sell all 100 of those. There's no sell pressure at that point because it offset by the original buy pressure. There's no lower amount at that point. Also consider the buying and selling is coming from an LP position somewhere that probably has an LP fee. So the outcome is, even after all the selling, I think it's still, you sell 100%, the price only went down 99% value of that if 1% was LP fee, right? So the original position actually went up slightly. Now that's an extreme case. If the example Dash gave earlier was, well, if only 80% of the Epoch is sold, the other 20% is held onto by the builders, then technically we had 20% of that yield was used as buy pressure, and the other 80% you could ignore, if that math helps.
Yeah, and like another example here, I mean, speaking freely with is Dinchi still here? I don't see Dinchi. Okay, for some reason I don't see him on the thing. So like Ninchi been amazing with the community manager role. So we spoke with Ninchi about coming on and getting paid in some Epoch tokens, and we always care the most about like how do we make sure that there's not a lot of downward pressure on Epoch if we pay Ninchi and Epoch. And so Ninchi is a long-term bull on Epoch, which is great. And, there's kind of an acceptance there that he's not expecting and doesn't want to sell his Epoch at all. It's kind of like some side money because he likes what we're doing and wants to believe in us and wants to be part of this. I think there's a lot of builders out there in the same boat where like the funding won't actually give them everything they need. They still have like a job. So the Epoch, I think a lot of the builders, I believe, will see this ecosystem, will take their Epoch and then want to stake it to like become a V Epoch holder and to like join our ecosystem. So that's just an assumption, but I would be very surprised if over 80 to 90% of Epoch was sold in the worst case scenario. But that's just my assumptions there. So really good questions here. I think I'm going to try to finish this thread here. And then Steve, keep me honest with anything that I may be forgetting. So UMA's funding. So we have been briefly talking with a few of the Risk Lab members about potentially creating a grant program or a grant funding kind of mechanism. We're calling it Optimistic Funding Platform, powered by UMA's Optimistic Oracle. We essentially like photoshopped the UMA's website. This is not what the UMA's website looks like, but we photoshopped it to show what this could look like. And if you zoom in enough, it says, this is the founder of UMA, by the way. It says, Hart Lambert successfully started a fight on Twitter today, and he gets 3 Doge. So this is him using the platform that we're building. And then here, like the benefits for UMA, engagement, demand, anti-fragility, expansion, and builders. You guys can read that a separate time, but yeah, we think that this is a no-brainer for UMA, but we need to see if they think that as well. So a lot of the comments that you guys have gave like a month or so ago was about like, we have all these elders, but like they're not doing anything. How do we get them more involved? So I took a personal initiative to try to meet with as many of them I could for like a 30-minute to a 60-minute meeting to reassert like what are our foundational beliefs and what we're doing, what we're building. And you can now publicly, anybody can click this and go see exactly what the elders see when they get onboarded. It talks about what is Epoch Island, it talks about their oath that they're taking, talks about the incentives that they're going to be opting into. And then I had to remove the hyperlink, but basically at the end here, they take an onboarding meeting with me, and also they join the Epoch Elders Telegram group. So just want to be very public and transparent. Anybody can now go view this if you guys want to see what how the elders are getting onboarded. Had a lot of interviews with people, and these were the takeaways: that the passport system was too complex, the ETH exposure, and then the other takeaway was the invitation system. So previously, what we were working on is like every person that you invite into Epoch Island is like 1-to-1. So like if Mozus wanted to invite Nanner would need to get an invite code from Mozus, and only that code could be used from Mozus to Nanner. But by the way, those are really 2 fun words to say, Mozus and Nanner back to back. But basically, we're working on like a one-to-many invitation system so that it can cut down the friction on like scaling, so that if somebody doesn't have to create like 20 million different invite codes to onboard people. We had the beta competition. To our knowledge, only one person found a bug like that needed fixing. So thank you guys for all who bridged over to Base to do that. We did announce that we do plan to move to Base as soon as possible. The token's technically already there. There's just no liquidity. And Ben has actually already created a UI on our DApp to trade Epoch tokens on Base. But again, there's no liquidity there, so we're not really moving too quickly on that just yet. I met a lot of new cool people. I met with Gabrielle Shapiro, who created Metalex Labs, a really cool project. He's really smart. He's actually a crypto attorney. So lots of questions that I got to pick his brain on. Met with Lauren, who is from Giveth, does a lot of funding stuff. Met with Maddie Tokenomics, who has a project that's being incubated by Delphi Labs. Really cool. It's actually, their tagline is "Make ICOs Great Again." So he's working in kind of funding mechanisms as well. I met with the founder of Zapper, Seb. That was a really fun chat. I met with a person who runs the Aave Grants program, and I met with a guy named Gary Xing, who is into network states. He actually runs multiple events all across the U.S. and in the world. He was a big part of the people who helped make the Vitalix Zazulu. I don't know how to pronounce it. He was one of the people who like facilitated a lot of that that they did a few years ago. And then I met with Ben Lakoff, who is from Bankless Ventures, and picked his brain on funding from a VC perspective. We are looking to relaunch the website here with some new graphics that really focus on everything we talked about today. Created a private Telegram group, which I think a few of you are in, to like get some funding off the ground. That's been fun to see. We hope that these people are kind of our first users. And then we have the Epoch Islander Assembly, which ended up happening today. So that is the thread. Appreciate everybody who stayed around this whole meeting. Would anybody like to nominate any last topics or questions for today?
I just wanted to comment on the UMA integration. I think one thing for you guys to think about is how to actually verify. So UMA can only verify publicly available information. So there need to be some way to verify that for non-stakeholders in this sort of process, to verify that something did or didn't happen in order to block or let those funds through. I don't exactly know how. It seems like a hard problem, but maybe you guys have put some thought into this.
So yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. So how, like, let's use a real example again. Let's say Zachary Dash wants funding. If you vote for me, I'm going to make 5 YouTube videos. And let's just start with this as an example. I'm Zachary Dash. I'm going to make 5 YouTube videos about UMA. And if you vote for me, that's what I'm going to do. And once I hit the 5 videos, then I'm going to withdraw my funds. If I were to say all of that in like a public verifiable tweet, okay, would UMA's optimistic oracle, they should be able to see if I posted 5 videos about UMA on YouTube. Like that's kind of what do you
Yep.
think the UMA would do? Like that would work, right? It's weird. It's different than prediction markets and everything UMA is normally, but it's like usable, right?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, that's a really great case. So if things are verifiable like that, then yeah, it would work out. If it's something like, well, I promise to give, 1% of profits, the wire transfer to, someone who holds whatever, however many coins, that's not something that can be verified, really. So you kind of have to take it. If I'm going to ship someone something, I'll ship you some swag. If you're, so that would be a little bit harder to verify. Well, maybe even possible.
Yeah, let's walk through it because this is where we actually, by the way, it seems like you know most people there. So Alex and Manny are the 2 people that we've been chatting with, and
Yeah.
We tried to press these questions with them, and Steve, I could be misreading, but like it seemed like Alex wasn't entirely sure like what would actually happen if you presented these edge cases. And I think that's kind of what we're excited with UMA, to like push it to its edge. So for example, David, like a simple example is like Zachary Dash is going to make 5 videos. What if I said 5 quality videos? What happens now? It's very subjective, right? If I can get the funding or not because it's a human. But isn't that like what UMA's good? I think that's what UMA's good at, is like humans are debating how they interpret this data. Like there's been so many subjective outcomes with like the Zelensky stuff and like a bunch of other stuff that like, so in the example, you said that one would be impossible. I think those two examples, I feel like UMA would still be able to. Now, I'm not going to say UMA would come to a clear consensus. There might need to be some back and forth on disputing that, but it would eventually resolve, right? Can you walk through an example of what you think would be an
Yeah,
impossible?
something really hard would be like, so take your passport idea. You know, if you were using your own system to like do this passport thing, and for every, you know, for the investors, we'll send you the swag box,
Uh-huh.
right? If you reach so many coins. The evidence of that is going to be so if that gets disputed, for some reason someone says I didn't get my box and I earned this many, you know, coins or whatever the terminology was.
Yeah.
The only evidence that you could provide is a picture of a UPS slip,
Yeah.
right? Um, that probably will be enough evidence for voters to say yes or no, but you could also just Photoshop a UPS slip.
Uh-huh.
In that case, it, you know, the voters would still vote for it probably, but you don't have the same. It's not the truth. Then it's you're sort of pulling one over on voters. But that's the
Yeah.
only way you can really verify.
Yeah, I get you. So the easier it is to like gamify it through Photoshop or through these other means, the more the gray area of the answer is, maybe people are going to be scared to vote for it because if they do, right, is they could get slashed or they could be wrong or whatever. And
Hmm.
but I'm really interested to see like what the heck would happen in that situation, you know? Um, because I guess what I'm trying to say is it's still a better solution than anything else I can think of, is what I'm trying to say of like how you would do that. But more importantly, I guess my what I'd like to, even if all of that is true, I think what the market would naturally start to do is I would not vote for somebody if if their result was in the gray area. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
um, I think naturally the votes would start to go to people that have like very clear, I will ship this protocol on this date by this time, like very more verifiable stuff. I don't know, but it is
yeah, you could be
interesting.
right there.
Yeah.
You could be right, but yeah, like you said, the phrasing around a lot of these questions ends up coming to if someone ships something a day late, does that mean they're not entitled to any funds? Like you basically have to write like a smart contract almost in
Human
text to
readable, like
yeah,
lawyer form. Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
What I actually think what comes to mind is, you know, another use case for your elders is to really use your elders to be the jury around these things and then have their result be the verifiable, the thing that UMA verifies. But you don't even need UMA in that case. They could just basically use like some sort of voting system to resolve this because the reason why I suggest this is the elders would be closer to the process and sort of be shepherding or overseeing or have some stake in making sure this process succeeds. Um, yeah, and they would have more knowledge. They'd be higher info voters than the UMA voters would be, I think.
Yeah, I don't disagree it'd be higher than UMA, but I think where I would be not so sure is that the elders are busy people, and I actually don't think that they would be in the weeds either. Like they would not be willing to investigate or find the right answer,
Yeah.
especially when we're talking about like $300 here, 1,000. Like it's just not going to intrigue them. But I think your greater intuition here is accurate, which is if elders sponsor builders, that's a social signal that gives me confidence. Like if Balaji sponsors somebody, I'm just going to vote for them because I trust in that process. And if I get screwed over, eh, my yield, whatever. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of like the system here is less at risk because it is yield based and not principle based. And if we can get elders to make stamp of approval on the builders that they know or approve of, it'll increase the trust of a lot of these. And that's not going to help with the dispute resolution process, but I think it increases the ability to vote on things and more like handshake agreements. But all of this is theory now. I'm really interested to see how it will play out.